Okay, let's go to the next one. 3.25 US pints. They want us to convert that into liters and then take that same 3.25 US pints and convert it to milliliters, rounding off both to one decimal place. Let's do the liters first. We need to know the relationship between US pints and liters. And as our chart shows us, there are decimal 454 liters in 1 US pint. We have 3.25 US pints, so we multiply 3.25 by the amount of liters, decimal 454, and we get 1.4755 liters in 3.25 US pints. We need to round that off to one decimal place, so that ends up giving us 1.5 liters, or a liter and a half, if you will, when it's rounded. Now we want to take that same amount of 3.25 US pints and convert it into milliliters. We can go different ways, but let's stick with the metric one first. We're going to convert the amount of liters into milliliters. But the secret here, we must use the unrounded answer to convert into milliliters. Otherwise, we'll miss the mark by a little bit too much. So our unrounded answer was 1.4755 liters. We'll multiply that by 1,000 because, of course, there are 1,000 milliliters in a liter. And our unrounded answer for milliliters is 1,475.5 liters, or milliliters, excuse me. And since that is already at one decimal place, there is no rounding left to do for that. Now, if we had chosen to take the 3.25 US pints and go directly to milliliters, we would have multiplied the amount of pints by 454 because there are 454 milliliters in 1 US pint. And when we do that multiplication, we end up with 1,475.5 milliliters. Relatively simple. Of course, we could have made it a little bit more complex, and some people just like to memorize certain relationships. They may not like to memorize 454 milliliters per US pint, but they know there are 16 ounces in a US pint. So they would take 3.25 US pints and multiply it by 16, which would then give you the amount of ounces that we have, and then they'd multiply that by 28.4 because there are 28.4 milliliters in every ounce. And if you do it that way, you end up with 1,476.8 milliliters. So again, slightly bit different, but if you show your logic, depending on the relationships that you use, your answer will be correct. Our next question, 4 pounds, 4 ounces. Let's convert that to kilograms. And then let's take that same 4 pounds, 4 ounces and convert it to grams. To make things a little bit easier, knowing full well that working with decimal equivalents is a little bit easier because we can use the old calculator, let's convert 4 pounds, 4 ounces into its decimal equivalent in pounds. Now, we know that there are 16 ounces in a pound, so we'll take our 4 ounces and divide it by 16, and that gives us decimal 25. So 4 pounds, 4 ounces is equal to 4.25 pounds. Now to convert that to kilograms, let's divide it by 2.2 because the relationship between pounds and kilograms, 2.2 pounds per kilogram. So 4.25 pounds divided by 2.2 gives us 1.9318 kilogram. So that goes there. We need to round that off to one decimal place, so we end up with 1.9 kilograms. Now we need to take that same 4 pounds, 4 ounces and convert it into grams. I am going to take the unrounded kilogram answer that we calculated, 1.9318 kilograms, and multiply it by 1,000, the amount of grams in a kilogram, and I get 1,931.8 grams, and that's already rounded to one decimal place, so there's one answer. I could have taken my 4.25 pounds and multiplied it by the amount of grams in a pound, which is 454, that answer would have been 1,929.5. Again, off by a little bit more than 2 grams, but again, because of the relationship that we used, this is indeed the correct answer. Show your logic. And then one last one. I could have taken my pounds and multiplied it by 454, the amount of grams in a pound, and added it to my 4 ounces times 28.4, which is the amount of grams in an ounce. So I would have had 1,816 grams in 4 pounds. I would add it to 113.6 grams in 4 ounces, and that would have given me 1,929.6 grams. So there you go. 4 different answers, 4 different ways of converting. If you show me the logic and you have the proper answer, you're going to be just fine on the test. Moving to the next one, we want to go 7 pounds, 10 ounces. And again, convert that to kilograms and take that same 7 pounds, 10 ounces and convert it to grams. I am going to convert my 7 pounds, 10 ounces into its decimal equivalent. So I take my 10 ounces and divide it by 16, the amount of ounces in a pound. I get decimal 625. So now I have 7.625 pounds. I'm going to divide it by the amount of pounds there are in a kilogram, 2.2, and I get 3.465909 for my kilogram answer. I need to round that off to 2 decimal places, so I get 3.47 kilograms. Now I need to take that same 7.625 pounds and go to grams. I will start off with the unrounded kilograms, 3.465909, multiply it by 1,000, the amount of grams in a kilogram, and I get 3,465.909, which rounded off to 2 decimal places gives me 3,465.91 grams. And what's just popped up on the screen for you are the other conversions you could have used based on the different relationships between pounds and ounces and grams and pounds and grams and ounces and what have you. So depending on the relationship you use, your answer will more than likely be a little bit different. But if you don't show me what you did to get that answer, if I don't see your logic, I have no idea if that answer is correct. So it's going to be a big 0 on the test. Show your logic. Let's move on to the next one. 3,897 grams. I need to round that off to pounds and ounces. There's no equal sign here. So I want to take these grams and convert it to pounds and ounces, rounding off to the nearest ounce. My relationship. Well, there are 454 grams in 1 pound. I'm going to take the amount of grams that I have, 3,897, and divide it by 454, the amount of grams that equals 1 pound. And when I do that, I get 8.58370004 pounds. I am now back to the no-brainer part. If I have 8 pounds in this decimal answer, I'm going to have 8 whole pounds up here. And now the only thing I need to deal with is the decimal 583.7004 pounds. I need to know the relationship, obviously 16. Let's multiply decimal 583.7004 by 16 ounces, and I get 9.33.92064 ounces, and that's going to go right here. I need to round off my ounces to the nearest ounce. I have 9.3 ounces, so it's either going to be 9 ounces or 10 ounces. Well, I think 9.3 is much closer to 9 ounces than it is to 10, so our final answer, a rounded answer here, is 8 pounds and 9 ounces. Let's take 7,800 grams and do the same thing. Again, we're looking at our relationships. How many grams in a pound? 454. Let's divide the amount of grams that I have by 454. I get 17.18061 pounds. That rounds, I take that 17 pounds, the no-brainer. I then take what's left, the decimal 180,616, multiplied by 16, the amount of ounces in a pound, and I get 2.889856 ounces. And if I round that off to the nearest ounce, my two choices being either 2 ounces or 3 ounces, and 2.88 odd ounces is certainly closer to 3 ounces. So my final rounded answer here would be 7,800 grams is equal to 17 pounds and 3 ounces.